All right, welcome back to another episode of Psycosmos. Today we got an exciting one. We're going to jump right in. The debate versus sidereal versus tropical. Now, first and foremost, why is this important? Is astrology even real? Is it not demonic? Etc., etc. First and foremost, yes, astrology is very real. You can go and study Carl Jung, for example, who was an extremely popular psychologist, psychoanalyst. And when you get into his, baseline high-level works, he talks very heavily about astrology, very heavily about esoteric mysticism, and how that all has interplayed into our psyche. This is even further proven if you've ever played the awesome video game series called the Persona series, which it's very much like Pokemon. If you've ever heard of it, you probably never have. A lot of you guys watching my channel are a bit older, but if you like video games, I recommend you check it out because it really goes into mythology. It goes into how we adopt personas and energy, ideally as like a mask or a front. And that's what astrology is about. It's about uncovering the mask, uncovering the front that we put on. So this was something that's also really important for sacred secretion timing, because you have some people who say, hey, well, here's the big, topic of discussion here. These systems of astrology are roughly about one sign off from each other. Technically, it's roughly about 24 degrees. So if you are born in Aries, let's say, and you're like, I was born late March or early April, I know I'm in Aries. Well, if you followed sidereal astrology, it would tell you that you're a Pisces. Now, this is a little bit of a conundrum because Aries and Pisces, although they have some similarities, are actually quite different. And most of the neighboring signs are quite different. So having your chart be off by one sign, degrees off by one sign, etc., is actually quite a big deal. And additionally, this plays again into the sacred secretion topic because we're tracking where the moon goes. And if you believe that you're a Cancer, like myself, I'm a sun sign Cancer. If you believe that you're a Cancer and then you find out you're a Gemini in sidereal, well, now you're like, well, am I going when the moon enters Gemini or Cancer or what have you? First and foremost, both of these systems of astrology are accurate. Both of them are correct in their own ways. I have like a lot of different notes and things that I'm going to be sharing today. But I want to really get into this because this is a really fascinating topic. I think you guys are going to learn a lot in this video. And the key point to take away is this. Number one, first and foremost, astrology is about quantum physics, quantum mechanics. All right. That means that if we want to study astrology, okay, the observable is not always the thing that we want to be looking at, because this has to do with light and vibration and frequency. Okay. The second thing we have to understand is these different astrological signatures were developed for different reasons, and they do different things. So yes, they're both accurate, and I'm going to explain in detail how that could be possible. But I actually really like this article. I have studied most of the branches of psychology, and that also includes Uranian, Draconian, Chinese, which I have a little bit of a spoiler for you guys later. Nobody ever talks about Chinese astrology. And if you're somebody who's sitting there like, well, no, sidereal. By the way, sidereal, it's not pronounced sidereal. It's pronounced sidereal. I don't know why. I guess it looks like sidereal, but it's sidereal, like celestial. Okay, sidereal. And if you're the type of person who's like, no, I believe in true sidereal astrology and tropical astrology is garbage and it's not accurate and it's fake and it's from the Roman conglomerate and blah, 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 I would have you, and I'm going to do this later. I'm going to showcase, actually, I might as well just do this now. Here are images of Mumbai. This is one of the wealthiest cities in all of India, okay? There's a reason why, and I'm not condoning this. I think this is a horrible atrocity in human history, but there's a reason why there were so many wars in the early 1900s, where it was the Western astrologers versus the Eastern astrologers. And the Eastern astrologers basically lost. okay? And the reason they lost is because of what I'm going to get into today. And this is Mumbai. It's a beautiful city in most of its parts. In some of its parts, not so much, just like any other city. But if you compare the GDP of Mumbai to a country like Shanghai, China uses Chinese astrology. They don't go off of Vedic, nor do they go off of Western, okay? Shanghai looks better in my view, and I mean, I've never been to China, but Shanghai right now today looks way better than if you were to show me Mumbai or if you were to show me London. Okay, so the whole point I want to get across here is I see people who will argue that Vedic astrology is garbage because the Indian people lost their war or whatever. I disagree with that notion, and again, I'm going to get into it. I got a rainbow here for a reason. I'm going to show you why that is later. This is a really cool article. As I said, I've studied Vedic astrology. Am I going to sit here and say that I know Vedic astrology as well as tropical Western astrology? No. Nor do I know Chinese astrology as well as tropical. Tropical is what I'm biased towards. It is what I started with. And then I studied Sidereal because I fell into that category of saying, wait a second, we've been lied to about everything, and Sidereal is actually accurate with how all the planets align in the sky, which is true. Vedic Sidereal is very accurate to the point. It's actually within 1 degree of where all of the objects technically are in the sky from our perspective. But I want to, so this is a really cool article. You can go check it out. It's on lightonvedicastrology.com. It's the Sidereal versus tropical debate. But you can read through all this. I'm not going to read this whole entire thing to you. Really, the culminating point that I want you to read is this. This is why some argue that your Vedic chart can be used for accurate for predictions with actual events on Earth, and your Western tropical chart is better for describing the psychological effects the actual events may have on your psyche. That is, if you were going to boil this video down, that's the answer. And I can prove it to you, and I can showcase as to why we have this like screwy multifaceted system and we have people arguing online. And then I'm going to show you exactly how you're supposed to incorporate this into your sacred secretion cycle, because so many people are like, I don't know what to do. And that included Kelly Marie Kerr, who I used to work with years ago, and she came to me and we had a conversation. I'm not going to pretend like I gave her a million answers here. I told her, hey, do a 7-day cycle system, which she then adopted and incorporated into her model. I'm the one who told her to do that. She was going off of the 3-day methodology just like everybody else. I said, why not use the Vedic time signature as your preparatory phase and try to do it for a full 7 days during where the moon would be in the sidereal and tropical systems? And she said, that's a great idea. And then she started doing that. So if you wanted to know where people started to get that from, you're looking at them. Now, why is that? Because I can sit here and I have the divine privilege, the wonderful privilege to be able to explain this information to you guys. Whereas most of the other people, whatever, they could have made videos on this. They don't. And if they do, it's not going to be as in-depth as this, I guarantee you. So, and that doesn't mean I have all the answers, by the way. That doesn't mean my ego's flared up or whatever. It just means I know what the hell I'm talking about. I've helped tons of people do this, and I love doing this. Okay, so let's get into it. We all know what the Western chart looks like, right? And basically what this is based off of, this whole entire debate between West versus East, is the precession. It really has little to do with the planetary placements themselves. It's the precession. Why do I say that? Because no matter what time you're in, no matter what year it is, March 21st is always going to be spring here on planet Earth. That is why Western astrology is always going to have a leg up, because it's going based off of the Earth plane, whereas Sidereal is looking into the higher stratosphere, which would be more of the celestial plane. Now you're asking me, well, isn't the whole point of the spiritual journey to get more on the celestial? You're never going to be able to escape the Earth until you're dead. You're never going to be able to get out of your body. I was born as a Cancer. Okay, I don't think super fast like a Gemini. I might articulate well, but I actually have my Mercury in Gemini, and this is all Western placements, right? If I were to go off of my sidereal chart, I would be a Sun Gemini, Moon Aries. I am way too calm, way too cool. Not cool like, interesting or unique, maybe, but I mean cool like calm, collected, emotionally regulated. My mother was a Moon Aries. That woman was not a Moon Pisces. That woman was not a moon Pisces. There's no way anybody would be able to convince me of that. She was a hot-headed woman. She was extremely angry, extremely aggressive. And this is why Western astrology and Western astrologers specifically seem to be more popular than Vedic. And that's because Vedic astrologers are generally interpreting these things wrong. That's what I've found. That doesn't mean that all the Western astrologers are right. I think that most of the Western astrologers today that you'll find on the apps are garbage. I have a few friends that I really trust. The main one would be Divine Mind 369. He and I are really good friends, and he really knows his stuff when it comes to astrology. So does Gnostic Pope, and a number of other unnamed ones, including like The Giver. He's really cool. A lot of really cool people. But I'll tell you, a lot of the more bland people who've got millions of followers on TikTok and stuff like that, and they give like the very generic stuff. Of course, so many people are going to resonate because they're very generic. When you start to get into the specifics, that's where people start to become wrong. It was probably about 80 or 90% of the astrologers that follow a Western system, and even some that followed Sidereal, said Donald Trump was going to lose and Kamala Harris was going to win the 2024 election. They got laughed off the platform because they were completely wrong, and it was kind of embarrassing for them. Now, if you're one of those people, hey, you got to learn some of this stuff. You got to understand where you probably went wrong. So we're going to get into it. Aries, March 21st, will always be that time signature. This is what's called an ephemeral time. This is an ephemeris. This is where we're tracking the true positioning. Now, this ephemeris is a Western ephemeris. This is going to be March of 2026. And as you'll see, this will never change, okay? You could go 2,000 years back, you could go 2,000 years forward. Western astrology goes based off of the energy that the earth feels during that time, okay? However, Vedic astrology is looking at the energy up in the celestial heavens. So, from a psychological perspective, from a physiological perspective, Western astrology will always rule because it's talking about where you are on this earth, and that's where you exist. But to understand parts of your higher self, to understand events and dates and things on a much more spiritual level, you would use an ephemeral sidereal time signature. You would use the sidereal astrology, the Lahiri astrology. Whereas this, what is this? This is the 1800s. I was looking all around. I was looking at all these different times. Let me get back to 2026. So this is going to be, nope, I need Lahiri. Thank you. And this is going to be March 21st, 2026, 6 degrees of Pisces. So now we have a conundrum because you've got the Western saying that on March 21st, the rising sign at 7 o'clock in the morning, roughly speaking, is going to be Aries, as it always is going to say that it's Aries. And the reason that that exists is to lock in the energy so that people understand the energy mechanics of this earth. As we go forward 2,000 years, these are going to remain the same, whereas the sidereal, these are going to change because this is more off of astronomical data. This is more off of the literal placements. Western astrology is based off of the energetic placements, and this is why the Western rules more of the subconscious, whereas the Lahiri rules more of the conscious. So in other words, Vedic astrology is more about how you can utilize this energy for the better. So I might be a Sun, Cancer, Moon, Taurus, but there's a good 1/12, 1/10 somewhere around that fraction of me, which has some Gemini and Aries qualities due to the sidereal placements. And this is how you have to have a good astrologer who can incorporate this, because you get a little bit of that Vedic energy as well. And if I lean into that more, then I can awaken into higher things. So instead of being a hyper-emotional Cancer, maybe with a Moon in Taurus, I'm very soft-spoken, whatever. I really need to be a little bit more aggressive, and I need to be more communicative with what I'm trying to get across. And that's actually something that I have struggled with. When you can tap into that energy, that's how you can become a higher version of yourself. Now, here's the problem, though. This 6 degrees of Pisces, this is accurate. Okay, so you have all these people who are saying we're in the age of Aquarius. We're in the age of Aquarius. We actually are, yes, in the age of Aquarius, but you're going to have a lot of sidereal people who say, we're not in the age of Aquarius yet. It's not coming until the year 2500, okay? Because that is where on the horizon here, instead of 6 degrees Pisces, it would be like 29 degrees Aquarius, or like 0 degrees Pisces entering that. Here's the problem, all right? And this is why I've got the rainbow. Cusps exist, all right? You have a lot of bunk astrologers. They don't know what they're talking about. Cusps exist. The rainbow is the evidence of that. We're talking about light and frequency. You don't see barriers within a rainbow that segregate the colors. The colors bleed into each other. So if you imagine that the entire zodiacal wheel is like a rainbow, yes, you see the red, you see the yellow, you see the green, you see the purple. But if you really, really try to focus on where those colors end and where they begin, it kind of becomes funky and difficult. And additionally, some of these colors look like they're bigger than the other colors, just like the way that we also see that some constellations are larger than other constellations. So, for example, going back to our ephemeris chart here, Pisces is way bigger than Aquarius. Aquarius is actually quite a thin, long, vertical constellation. It's actually one of the most vertical ones. I think another one is Virgo, but there's not many that are like that. Whereas Pisces has the two fish and they're just kind of going all over the place. Aries is also quite small. So if you wanted to look at it based off purely off of not the 30-degree signature, which this is going off of, but by the constellations themselves, then we've been in the age of Pisces for a very long time, because Aries is tiny and Aquarius is thin. It's not even tiny. It's just more thin compared to the other signs. But that's not how this functions or operates. We've denoted 30 degrees for each sign, specifically because we feel as though that energetically makes the most sense. So, with that being said, we take a look at this sidereal. We've got 6 degrees Pisces. Now, based off of the sidereal calculations, they'll say, you know, oh, we won't really enter until, I think, the year 2600 AD, which would be in, you know, roughly 600 years, 575 years, somewhere around there. That, however, is wrong, and I'm going to tell you why. That's based off of the astronomical IAU boundaries, which denotes that we live in a precession of 26,000 years, and that's where it comes from. It comes from international astronomical organizations. So, like, think NASA. Okay, so if you trust NASA, which I know like most of you don't, I'm one of them. I don't fully trust NASA. But if you trust NASA, you're the type of person who would say we're not in the age of Aquarius yet, purely because of the fact that you're looking just based off of the physical location. Every other culture, this would include the Yuga cycles, this would include the Mayan calendar, this would include the Greeks, this would include even parts of the Hebraic calendar, all believed that we lived in a roughly 24,000 year precession, which coincided with the 24 hours of the day. Roughly drawn between, you know, about 2,000 years per age. That would mean that the age of Aquarius would start sometime between the year 1900 and 2150 AD. And guess what? We're right smack dab in the middle of that right now. So there's kind of a multitude of layers. There's the physical layer of what we're seeing. I'm going to address that in a second. That's based off of what people are assuming is sidereal today, although that's not really where Vedic got its roots. There's a symbolic precession, okay, which is roughly the 30 degrees every 72 years. The 72, that's a big deal of a number. The Shem HaMephorash of the Hebrews, for example, and just like the cycles of time, cycles of ages. That would imply that we're on the cusp of the age of Aquarius, which, let's be real, Pisces is not known for technology. Okay, Pisces is known for dreams and artwork and lyricism and music, and that's what we've known for the last 2,000 years. Technology is this very new thing. You can never argue that we're not at the very least at the cusp. And that, again, go back to the rainbow. It's all about cusp. So even if you want to say, well, we're in 6 degrees Pisces, we still got another 6 degrees to go. Yeah, guys, anything, the standard rule of thumb, if you're going to go off of anything denoted by the sun, is 7 degrees, which would mean that sometime probably 100 years ago is when we started entering the age of Aquarius during the Industrial Revolution. If you're going to go at the very, very, very beginning stage of where people would have started to feel that energy. And it actually coincides with like the occult revival that happened in the late 1800s, you know, the Industrial Revolution, all those wars and revolutions that came about around that time. That would make sense if you were talking about cusp energy. But then you also have the compressed cycle, which is that 24,000, roughly speaking, years. And then there's an energetic and field base, which is pretty much runs in line with that. Multiple sources, if you were to go by the Mayan calendar and all the other ancient cultures, the Yuga cycle itself. So this is, again, the problem that arises. The Yuga cycle, which is heavily involved with sidereal astrology, did not believe in a lot of cases the 26,000 years. That got changed and that got updated after a lot of these astronomical societies came and said, hey, we think it's this. Here's where I think they screwed up, and this is my theory, you know, and I've run this through like AI models and stuff, and I've asked what they think and blah, blah, blah. It's about light and refraction. Okay, so this is possibly something that most people, it could be a distinction between physical geometry and energetic experience, but basically what I'm trying to get at here is somehow in the last 2,000 years, all right, there were too many accounts. If you could go do the research, go ask your AI models, go read your books, blah, blah, blah. Between 250 AD and 250 BC to 250 AD, between this like 500-year stretch, okay, there were too many changing models of astrology. And you had Zoroastrian, you had Chinese, you had Vedic, you had the Greeks. All these, the Hebrews had their own form, the Mazzaroth. All these different forms of astrology were trying to basically align things properly. And what they were seeing was that the Vedic and the Western were aligned perfectly during that rough period of time. And we went from the age of Aries into Pisces, which means that we reset the cycle. And of course, that cycle goes backwards, right? We've got the precession of the equinox. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay, this is Vedic, versus Western. No, I don't think I have a good picture of it. And here's some more Vedic stuff that I've studied. And then there's Chinese. Like there's 10 mansion systems in Chinese and all that. There's the four corners with the four deities that represent the four, north, south, east, west. It's the same thing as the lion, the bull, the man, and the eagle, of the Bible. So we've got this debate during this time of, let me go here. We've got this debate during this time where basically they said, well, hey, look, Aries to Pisces, this is where the precession resets every roughly 24,000 years. This is what they believed. So with that, there was an alignment because you could physically see Aries was on the horizon. You could physically see the change going into Pisces. But what happened was it seems as though during that time, it was like lagging. It was almost like going backwards a little bit, then forwards, depending on the year. Now, as we're moving forward in time, it seems as though it's lagging even more. Okay, so if you were to make the assumption that we're talking about a shift going in at 2600 AD, right? So in like 500 years, that's where we're finally going to be in the age of Aquarius. That would mean that each time cycle is like close to 3,000 years long, which is not found in any model of our ancient ancestors. Okay, that's a problem because I personally don't think that each age is 2,800 years because nobody believed that. Nobody back in the day believed that. And the only reason that they believe it today is because the astronomical societies assume that it's not 24, but it's 26,000 years. Where would that extra 2,000 years have come from? It would have come from them just looking purely at the stars and not understanding the energy mechanics, not understanding the refraction of energy, not understanding how the placements operate so that light and energy bends, hitting the earth in specific ways. And, my AI tool, I'm just using like ChatGPT and other models, very basic, but I'm talking to it And I'm going to look for where it said, I don't even remember what it said. It said something really like extremely difficult calculus wise. But there is something called stochastic calculus, and this is something I already knew, where that stochastic calculus and the refraction of light can embody what is normally called the ionamsa. Okay, so let's just go up here real quick. Where is the word? The ionamsa. This mathematical difference between the sidereal and tropical zodiacs is called the ionamsa in Sanskrit, which means the precession portion, okay, or part. The term refers to the number of degrees difference between the spring equinox and the first degree of Aries. However, to further complicate matters, there are several commonly used ones that vary by nearly 2 degrees from one another. All right, this is what I'm talking about. Where if you like, there's just as many forms of Vedic astrology as there are languages in India, which is one of the largest populated language-based centers in the world. India is ruled by the sign of Gemini. If you didn't know, I have a whole model on this on my online university. So they have all these different categories of how these differences of degrees between Western and Eastern carry out. And what I'm believing, this is my theory, right? Like, it's not like I can say this is proof 100%. But my theory on this is that they're not taking into account the idea of light refraction. And again, I'm looking for the information here because I've got so many notes here. Right. So light refraction. It seems as though there's like an energetic frequency baseline for the energy that is hitting our planet versus what we're seeing in the sky. Okay. And I think this is why more people align with traditional Western astrology, because the ionamsa, ionamsha. I mean, I've seen it spelled like multiple different ways. However it's preferred, I apologize. There's all these different, it's talking about Van Mises, and I don't know. I'm just going to be honest. I have no clue what this calculus stuff is. So if you guys are like really big into mathematics and calculus, then maybe you guys could take it. But essentially what it postulated was, yes, there would be a degree of error if you were not accounting for light refraction by looking at where those planetary objects were based in the sky. So in other words, just because it's placed somewhere doesn't mean that that's how the energy hits our Earth. That doesn't mean that's how the energy plays out, because spring is always going to be spring and fall is always going to be fall. And for the last 10,000 years, that's never changed. So you have to ask yourself, how would that be possible? How would it be possible that it has never changed? If the sun is technically in Pisces still, but we're still feeling Aries energy. And again, it's because one has to deal with higher celestial, like cosmic event planning. This is what Vedic astrology is used for. They're very basic when it comes to the personality aspects when you get in India. Now, that doesn't mean that people in the West who are practicing Vedic astrology trying to unbox it from a psychological perspective, because the West has been obsessed with the psychology. That doesn't mean that they're right or they're wrong necessarily. But if you study how traditional Vedic astrologers utilize it today in India, it's like 80% or so is like wedding planning. It's trying to find compatibility for marriage, which is like of course a psychological thing, but it's very like higher level. Now, does that mean that you're not going to get into the depths with Vedic astrology? No, of course not. Vedic has its place. It's really cool. It's very unique. It has to deal with what your soul should try to embody to step into itself. So, for example, again, I'm a Cancer. I could take the path of a counselor or a psychologist, which I basically did, but I don't like to do psychological work because it's too heavy for me. I much more prefer the literary stuff to uncover, right? Like, dig in the sand with my little hands as a crab, but the hands are, of course, ruled by Gemini. So I'm digging in the sand looking for stuff for you guys, and then using my voice and being confident in myself instead of Moon Taurus, which is kind of more lackadaisical, maybe can be a little too passive. Instead, I have to embody being a little bit more aggressive. My mother, Moon Aries, she had to embody being a little more kind, Moon Pisces, right? right? So it all is encompassing here. But again, energy bleeds together. So if you don't believe in cusps, that I can 100% say is wrong. As somebody who's read like well over 250 charts of people who have paid for it, and then read like celebrity charts and other people up the wazoo, cusps are completely real, and energy does not cascade in this like barrier effect in most instances. If you look at the oceans like converge in different spots, and it's like the waters try not to mix like water and oil, but that doesn't mean that with action and activity you can't like shake them up and they won't actually mix together a little bit. And these things are constantly moving. It's constantly in action. So if it were stalled, that would be where you would see the separation. But because it never stalls and it's constantly moving in a spiral helix, it's always going to be that, right? So it's always going to be a mix. And so we have to recognize and understand that, yes, it is correct. 21st of March, we're at 6 degrees of Pisces, technically. However, we don't know how off that is based off of the actual placements versus the energy that we're getting. That's what Western is trying to account for. But if you use Western, you're never going to understand what the age is. And in actuality, we are probably still in the age of Pisces, but it's cusped with the age of Aquarius, where we're getting that energy now, which essentially means that we're entering it there. All right. The age of Pisces started having its effects around like 300 BC. Jesus came at year 0, year 5, whatever. Like people say 5 BC, 5 AD, whatever. It doesn't matter. And then 250 AD is where, the physical placement of the sun moving finally into Pisces truly occurred. It's something along those lines. So, but that doesn't align with the way that people felt the energy. So you're talking about a 500-year like energetic cusp where people start to feel that energy. So it wouldn't even matter if it was 500 years ahead. It wouldn't even matter if the sun doesn't technically enter Aquarius on, according to the Sidereal. We're feeling the energy now. So yes, we are in the age of Aquarius. We have started the advancement of the technology. We have started the golden age of spirituality, because that's what the age of Aquarius represents too. It's not just the technology. So it also makes sense as to why these guys are freaking out. And additionally, I think that the precession that's 26,000 years is a lie, which would mean that maybe perhaps some of this information is skewed on purpose, purposefully. Either it's skewed on purpose, or people haven't put into the idea of the light refraction, and maybe this is actually closer to that 0 degree mark than we actually think. And I wish I could test that. I could probably ask ChatGPT to test that, but either way, that is my philosophy. That's just my idea. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is if you're going to come into my comments and you're going to say, I studied from this Hindu mystic, and I traveled to India and Dubai, and I went to fucking Nepal, and I did all this cool shit, blah, 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 and they taught me and they showed me that true sidereal was real, and yada, yada, yada. Okay. You probably don't know a goddamn thing about Chinese astrology. I can almost guarantee, and again, it's because it's biased. People get very biased with whatever system that they feel applies the most to them, right? Again, I started with tropical astrology. I am biased 100%, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect the other systems, and that includes Chinese astrology as well. So if you don't know enough about the Tao and how this system of astrology is incorporated into you, if you don't know which year of the Chinese zodiac you were born and what that actually means, which, by the way, it's ruled by Jupiter. The Chinese year system is about the planet Jupiter, because Jupiter goes into one sign every year. Okay, so you've got to track Jupiter. So whereas everybody is celebrating, February time frame, Jupiter is actually right now, it's I think it's a little bit over a year, so it actually changes every year. Jupiter right now, we're in the year of the year of the horse. So we've already entered the year of the horse. That was like 4 months ago. Now, here's the reality of it, though. The reality of it is this. This is what's beautiful about this. Jupiter enters Cancer, which means we're in the year of the horse. When Jupiter was in Gemini, this is all Western, of course. When Jupiter was in Gemini, we were in the year of the snake. Now we're in the year of the horse, okay? You won't see the culmination of that until February, where things will start to move forward in the energy of the year of the horse. Why? Like, it's already happening now, but we as people are the conscious activators. So in other words, if all of this astrology was wrong, and we're all going off of wrong placements, and we're all not understanding the real astrology, and maybe the sign of Cancer is really Sagittarius, and maybe the sign of Gemini is the sign of Capricorn. I don't know. Maybe we've got the whole thing mixed up, okay? Whatever we believe will become real. That's just the truth. Because how we consciously download this information and manifest it into our lives is what creates reality. So because people believe on a wide scale that February is where this whole shift takes place, which, by the way, that probably was just a thing that occurred because they started celebrating the Chinese New Year, and Jupiter was probably shifting in February. That's probably exactly what it was, and then they just never changed it. They never updated it. Because why? Because the elites don't want you to know it's about astrology. So Jupiter will have shifted and has shifted in every single month at some point. So my guess would be that this started probably around that January, February time frame of wherever the Chinese New Year now takes place. And now it's an energetic idea. So people, again, we create it. Why, everybody's like, oh, March 21st was the new year, and then we switched it to January 1st, and that's wrong. Too bad. Everybody believes it. Everybody who follows the Western calendar today believes it. Does that mean that we shouldn't fight it and, find a better solution? No. But everybody believed it, so then it's true. You see what I'm saying? The cosmic heavens are great, and again, this is why people follow Western more than Sidereal or Chinese. The energy is great, the notion, the rituals are great, but the reality is whatever the people think and whatever they feel is what's going to happen. Okay, and if people feel like spring comes every March 21st, then that is when the Aries season is going to start. Because that's how we feel the energy on this plane of existence, and that's what matters the most. So whatever's going in the celestial heavens, we oppose that. And that's the whole thing of free will. That's the whole thing of the dynamic quest to be a human being and to discover your soul's journey and yada yada. Okay? But nobody is looking at Chinese astrology, so nobody talks about it. So none of the energy placements from this has as much of an impact as the other ones. But people will still sit there and they'll get a lot of astronomical data wrong. And my job is not to sit here and say anybody's wrong. I think everybody has their own system, their own methodology, whatever. The only thing I'm going to say you're wrong on is cusps. I don't know where people got this idea that cusps don't exist. All right? It's like, look at your body. Okay? Your brain is still in your stomach. It's still in your genitals. It's still in your heart. All right? The nervous system. Your foot and your mouth are not the same thing. But your foot is connected to your mouth via the nervous system. There is an underlying invisible system where even though the brain is apart from the body, there's still a channel for it because it's all one system. And that's what we're looking at here when we look up into the nighttime sky. It's all one system. All the energies are the same energies, they just culminate in different ways. Cancer and Capricorn, is especially when you're looking at the sister signs, the opposing signs, Cancer and Capricorn are the same energy, they just come out in different ways. Sagittarius and Gemini are the same energies, they just come out in different ways. Taurus and Scorpio, same energies, they just come out in different ways. And so it's the way that you break these things down and wrap your head around it. But ultimately, it's like, do you know which corner of the four you preside in with Chinese astrology? Do you know there's mansion systems, there's constellation systems, there's I guess what you would call decans. They have decans in Chinese astrology, although I don't think that's what they're called. I don't remember what they're called because I'm not good with the words. I'm not good with the linguistics. If I was a Gemini, I would be, but Western, I'm not a Gemini. Sidereal, I'm a Gemini. I've always fumbled over my words. I guess you could say I used to talk a little fast when I was younger, but not so much anymore. There's a lot that goes into it. But basically, if you want to understand astrology, study everything. Okay, number one, so that you can wrap your head around these things. Number two, um, I think we should really look into this whole 26,000 year precession cycle system, because I think that's going to disrupt us. I think that Sidereal and Western are essentially the same. It's just, again, it's a manifestation of energy in a different way. But I've read plenty of charts. People have paid me good money to read their charts, and I will tell you from my calculations and from my guesswork, I really, really do suspect that the way that all of this energy kind of manifests is that the Western takes a precedence because of our plane of existence, but the Vedic is and also the Chinese are good for understanding your soul expression, for understanding things. Vedic astrology is more fate based. I don't know if you guys know that. Western has more free will. And if you study why why even Western astrology propped up, they didn't like how the Vedic astrologers were just going up into the mountains and keeping all the information from everybody else, not teaching it to anybody, and then basically saying, yeah, you don't have free will. The stars dictate everything. And then the Western people, which the West has always done this. You study just European history, you study like Western history in general. They're basically the ones that are like, we're going to oppose God. We're going to oppose anything that is already set as a precedent. We're going to say no, even if that means to human rights and stuff like that. And that's the mask that they wear is, oh, it's all free will. You can do whatever you want. Blah, blah, blah. And so people do, and then people get antsy as to, why then they're like super controlling. But the East has a problem as well. And the East's problem is it's too pie in the sky. It's not like practical enough. Again, you've got like the Chinese Taoist monk that goes up into the mountains and just like spends his entire life for 60 years. I used to glamorize that. I used to think, wow, like how cool to be a conduit of God's spirit and to like sit on a mountaintop and just hone in on that energy and like use your body as a vessel to spread that energy throughout the world. But that's not what they did. They harnessed that energy for themselves and rarely interacted with people, outside of their communities. And yeah, they would have some people come in and they would do exchanges and of goods and stuff like that. But like when you study the practicality of what it means to be like a monk, like you fly in Shanghai and you go up into those mountains and you never see a single face other than whoever's there. You're seeing the same faces over and over again, but you never see a new face. There's a lot of like culture in those Himalayan mountains between India and China where they really like that's kind of a crux point. It's kind of like the neck of the world. That's why Mount Everest is there. It's like they really just wanted to sit there and harness that potent energy. But then, like the Indian and Chinese paupers are starving, and it's a hierarchical system, and they're not spreading that goodness to everybody else because they're trying to maintain the balance while they're just like, eating and living for free. It really is kind of like a struggle when you have to bridge the spiritual and the physical. And I think that's why you have to study multiple systems. So anyway, that was my point. I love all you guys. If you guys are interested, I do have, a couple of different things you can check out. First and foremost, I've got this Psycosmos University. People are loving it. People are using it. Come check it out. People are really enjoying it. And, we got like a ton of new members recently, which was great. We have lots of different courses. Again, I have a Zodiac Masterclass. All right, this is my astrological masterclass. I do talk about Chinese. I do talk about Vedic astrology. It's all in here. Now, if you're interested in more of like something on the back end, I've got Astraya AI. This is an AI tool that I developed, and I'm still adding to it. I'm still expanding it, but basically the whole gist is this. It utilizes astrology of all systems, mainly Western, if you were interested, and it calculates a lot of things, including your sacred secretion time. So that's actually coming out in the next update, which should be in the next couple days. But it's going to have a sacred secretion. It does actually have a working sacred secretion calendar. I just haven't made it live yet because I'm working on some other bugs. But it's got awesome psychological in-depth ability. It was trained by me. It's got life coaching ability. It's completely private and secure, which that was like the biggest pain in the ass to do, by the way. So at the very least, give me some props for that because that was really tough. None of your information is stored. None of your information is sold or given it away to anybody. It will do learning from you if it learns some things about you, like your job, or if you're married or something like that, so that it can understand you better. Outside of those things, like if you're talking about very private matters, it does not store that information. And the pricing models are also getting updated too, where I'm actually lowering the prices very soon. So you might not want to check this out now. Maybe come back next week and check it out then, when the prices will be lower. But either way, definitely check out the AI tool as well. I've got my books on Amazon. You can go and check those out. And yeah, I mean, I love you guys very much, and I appreciate you guys. I hope that you guys are doing well, as always. If you guys are interested, both of the Psycosmos University and the Astrology app have affiliate programs. If that interests you as well. There's a whole affiliate course that you can take. Essentially, if you get 3 people on board, then, and some people have taken advantage of this. If you get 3 people on board, it pays for your whole service. And if anything more than that, you're actually making commission income. So I always love giving back to my people. Lots of love. I hope that you guys have a blessed day. And if you need coaching services or anything else, if you're interested in an astrology reading, reach out to me. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.